Okay, good. Does anyone have any questions, please? Kiba, go ahead, please.
I know this is a crazy question, but is there a dress code?
Not that I know of. Harvard hasn't stipulated a dress code as far as I know. I would, you don't have to wear business attire for any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I don't think there's a dress code. Anybody else? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the presentation proposals. I've heard from a couple of you about the presentation proposals, and I'm very happy that you looked into this and started submitting it. It's so much easier if you start out ahead of everything and try to get going early. So for the rest of you, please do connect with your teams, and please do talk about this, and don't wait until this weekend to start thinking about this and start talking about this with your teams, because it will be far more difficult if you wait until that time. So in any case, any other questions on the presentation proposals? Allison, go ahead, please.
Yes, in regards to what we submit, I know you mentioned it's first come, first serve.
Yes.
So in the event that, groups pick the same, will you give us feedback so we can promptly reply with our second choice, or
Absolutely.
how will that work?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, I will. I will give you feedback on that.
Thank you.
Sure. Michael, go ahead, please.
Yeah, our team sent you an email and you approved our proposal, so we don't have to give you anything else during the weekend, do we? That was our final proposal?
No, you're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you. So we will go on then and finish up our session 2 wrap up. Okay, we were talking about the knowledge management. Michael, I think you have your mic open. Thank you. Okay, so we were talking about knowledge management when we last left our discussion. And I wanted to share something with you which is a little bit different, which is NASA. And the vision and mission drives knowledge management. And NASA, as you know, are the people who brought you the space shuttle and other fantastic things from the our space initiative. And I wanted to bring you the vision and the mission from NASA. And this is the last strategic plan that I could find in NASA. And the vision is to reach for new heights and reveal the unknown for the benefit of humankind. Good vision statement. And the mission, as you see, to drive advances in science, technology, aeronautics, et cetera, and do so for the stewardship of Earth, which is also a very great mission statement. So I wanted to share this with you because there is a really interesting YouTube video available to you from the Academy of Program and Project and Engineering Leadership. So if you think about what it takes to really develop and take something into space like this, something this complicated and something this complex. And really the number of engineering groups that it takes to put this type of thing together. I would highly suggest that you take a look at this, and it's a pretty long video. It is a video which is put together by a guy who really took a lot of time to work with these people, and he, I would say look at the first 15 minutes because it's about 45 minutes long. But anyway, look at the first 15 minutes and listen to what he has to say in terms of the collaboration effort with knowledge management. And if any of you have to put together a knowledge management type of project, you must watch this because it is really, really interesting and really insightful in terms of how knowledge management can work in a company with a very complicated project. So, please think about this. Okay, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is the Vrind model, and sometimes it's called the Vrio model. It depends on who you are. It depends on the different researchers and what have you. Vrind, as you see, valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable, exploitable. The Vrio model concentrates a little bit more on organization at the end of it, but it is a good model. It is interesting from the standpoint of looking at it from the internal perspective. So on valuable, does the resource or capability allow the firm to meet a market demand or protect the firm from market uncertainties? The valuable piece of this, the valuable test of this, really is kind of the real entry into the market perspective. The rare thing assumes the resource or capability is valuable but scarce relative to demand. And you think about rare in terms of conveying a competitive advantage, but as you see here, the permanence is not assured. So rare is good, but it isn't a long-lasting type of thing. Inimitable and non-substitutable it's a valuable and rare resource, but it's difficult to imitate or substitute and provide the potential for sustained competitive advantage. So you need to think about that. And then exploitable, for each step of the preceding steps of the Vrind test, can the firm actually exploit the resources and capabilities that it owns or controls? So really what this means is, does the firm use the resources that it has to really make good use of the resources that it has? So for example, there are in the area of the Boston area, and when it was really growing very progressively in terms of the high-tech sector, there were lots and lots and lots of firms who provided and grew a lot of resources in terms of their I guess you could say their different types of there are different types of excuse me. there are different types of uh, uh, resources which were um, focused on their um, um, one moment, please. Folks, sorry about that pause. Okay, so a lot of the areas in the again in the tech sector had a lot of different facilities, and a lot of them were going under, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, and the facilities were just sitting there, and the companies could have very easily rented them out. They could have sold them, but they didn't. And it was, it was just a waste. It was a waste of resources and a waste of facilities. And they really, really went under. And this was a something that they could have they could have really taken advantage of, and they didn't do it. So, you know, you have to think about that and think about what is exploitable here. Okay, so let's take a look a bit about advantages. They can be tangible and intangible. Here are a couple of examples. These are very obvious examples. So Walmart, for example, looked at the location selection, and there were intangible advantages here, but the tangible was rural real estate. And if you look at the idea of McDonald's, however, the intangible advantage here was the brand, and they looked at the high traffic real estate. So if you think about where McDonald's located themselves, they located themselves in the area of you know, usually you could see McDonald's in near Home Depot. You could see McDonald's in areas where they have different high traffic real estate examples. And so these are just a couple of situations where you can see that there were two examples of different advantages. So here's the other thing too. The sources of a competitive advantage can take many forms. So there are lots and lots of different situations here. So sources of advantages can include loyalty programs. They can include distribution networks, patent portfolios. Many companies profit very significantly from the use of different patent portfolios. Brand recognition is another good thing. Differentiation, and also low cost, and we will be going into differentiation and low cost in more detail in a little bit later on. And also there are many others. So there are lots of sources of competitive advantage, and companies can really focus on this and really look at different ways to really get a hold of this and make advantage of it. Okay, so now the whole idea is sustainability here. Just having a competitive advantage is not enough. Can it be sustained? How are companies going to sustain their competitive advantage? How are they going to do this? Because here's the idea here. The whole idea of getting resources and capabilities are accumulated over time. And how can this competitive advantage be sustained? Normally, companies sustain their competitive advantage because they get out in front of innovation, they get out in front of opportunity, and they really strive to maintain a competitive advantage due to innovation and other things. So it's something that the companies have to do very specifically and on a very focused initiative. Okay, let's look at SWOT a minute. I think that many of you or most of you are probably familiar with a SWOT analysis. How many of you have done a SWOT analysis either in a class or for your companies or in some other area? Okay, a number of people. That's good. Okay, so the SWOT analysis, if you look at it from an internal perspective, you're looking inside for strengths and weaknesses. And the idea here is that on the SWOT internally, it is strengths and weaknesses internally to the company. If you look at it from the external perspective, you look at opportunities and threats. So the whole idea here is the company's expertise or skills, as you see here, in areas that directly produce superior performance. So if you look at Bechtel, they have large-scale project management. They are very, very, very good at this. 3M has for years been really stellar at producing new ideas and R&D. But you need to do something that's good, exceptionally good, which is valued by customers. And these things can, again, as you see here, make or break the business. And the thing is with the SWOT, however, that it's a point in time snapshot. It's not a future direction. So the SWOT analysis is something that you focus on really at the moment, but it can inform your future direction, but it's not the future direction. So it's important to keep that in mind if you're doing it. So there are different ways to look at the SWOT analysis. So for example, on the financial expectations, as you see here, usually in financial expectations, you're looking at cash flow, access to outside capital, the hurdle rate, etc. You are usually looking at the performance of current operations. You are looking at typically product performance and product features and things of this nature. So it's important when you're doing these things, and I've done these a number of times, it's important to try to get to the level of analysis where the differences can be observed. So for example, if you look at an overall company, and if you look at IBM or any of these big companies, IBM or GE or some of the others, you can't really say, okay, what is the SWOT analysis for this company? You have to get to the point where you're looking at the product line. You have to get to the point where you are looking at maybe specific market segments in a product line. So for example, if you were looking at GE and you were looking at their turbine business, you wouldn't want to just look at their turbine business. You would want to look at different segments of their turbine business that you want to evaluate, because it's probably not the best level of granularity if you look at the overall business there. So it's pretty important to focus on a particular area and not just the overall business thing. So another thing that you need to look at, of course, is the management and culture piece of the SWOT analysis. Is the company change ready? And we will talk about this in more detail when we talk about implementation a bit later on in the course. And the whole idea here is that you have to be capable in terms of your overall view of the company to make these changes come about. And you have to get people need to buy into this. And it's not always easy for people to buy into this. And I am sure that you, as individuals, have experienced these issues. And the whole idea of changing, and the whole idea of changing your processes and changing the way you look at the business, and the whole idea of just changing the way you react to things as an individual. And this is a tough thing. This is a very difficult thing, and we will again talk about this later on in the course. So how about firms responding to rivals' threats? So you have these, so dynamic capabilities. You think about dynamic capabilities and the agility of the company to really uh, enable themselves to make changes and what have you. And agility is really critical to survival in changing environments. And these are just a few. These elements in the ovals that you see here, these are just a few of the areas where um, you can see that agility is critical to survival. So what happens? Buyer preferences change. Competitors disrupt positions. New entrants challenge existing structures. Not often, but sometimes economic shocks stall buyers and investors. We all saw this in 2008. It was pretty serious. And also new technologies. New technologies can shift markets rapidly. So this is a very tough thing to consider. But companies have to understand how they're going to deal with this. They have to understand how they're going to be agile enough to make these changes and understand how they're going to shift their positions in order to move forward. Okay, let's talk about the value chain a little bit. Now, I expect that many of you have encountered value chain analysis and at some point in your careers, either in a course or in your particular business. But if you take a look at the little the little thing down at the lower right hand of the screen, this is the value chain idea. And Porter is very big on value chain analysis. Many other people have written about value chain analysis, but it allows a deeper look at the company's cost structure. So when you think about value chain analysis, it's how do the company activities deliver value to customers compared to its rivals? So the whole idea here is looking at the industry and looking at your company in an end-to-end analysis. It can include value chains of suppliers, distributors, retailers, what have you. If you take the value chain, outside of just your company, it is a much larger appraisal, and it's a much larger activity. Okay, so the whole idea is looking at activities. What activities allow the company to offer lower prices? What activities enhance the differentiation, support higher processes? What prices, what are the profit margins along value creating activities? So here is an internet startup example from the value chain. Now, I use this only because this is absolutely one of the most common examples of a value chain analysis. In fact, I think I think I've seen this in, I don't know, 5-10 articles, something like that. So if you look at the top pieces, you will see the support activities for the firm. So finance, legal, HR, as you see it, the technology development is included up there. The procurement activities are developed there. And the primary activities that you see at the bottom are really the critical ones. So how are you going to do warehousing and billing and collections and picking and shipment of things and pricing, promotions, advertising, returned items? I never really understood what the issue was with the returns process until I actually had to do a consulting engagement, which focused on a return return process, and it's a lot more complicated than anyone ever really thinks about. But you know, thinking about this, if you look at these primary activities, what you want to do with the value chain analysis is really break down all of these activities and understand what the costs are and what is of value to your clients. And if you can do this successfully, it is incredibly valuable. I've talked to people who have done this before in the past. I talked to a client who did this once with an M&A activity, and it was really beneficial to them to go through this analysis. So I would really highly recommend that if you have the opportunity, that you conduct one of these and you take a look at it. Okay. Now, how to use value chains to gain competitive advantage. All right. If you look at things from a differentiation perspective, if you can find a different way to perform activities, a different way, you can get longer lasting advantage. If you find a better way to perform the same activities, okay, you will probably get some advantage temporarily, but it will be shorter term. So finding a different way to perform activities is really much more effective in terms of gaining competitive advantage. And a good idea of this is IKEA. And I think most of you probably know about IKEA. They are they offer furniture. They really made a very different way of going into the market. They took a look at different sourcing and assembling and delivery mechanisms. They transferred the assembly and delivery to the consumer. And this is really an innovative way of looking at the market and looking at a different way of offering furniture to consumers. And if you think about the usual version of consumers, you know, the usual version of furniture supply, you can think of a large store. They have a lot of inventory. Oftentimes there are months and months and months of lead time before you can actually get your product that you're looking for. And IKEA, on the other hand, just changed the game. They really changed the game. And the amazing thing about it, and I have to share this story with you because it's so astonishing to me. There was an IKEA that was set up in Sunrise, Florida. And Sunrise it's kind of around the Fort Lauderdale area. And what is in Sunrise, Florida? Who are the consumers in Sunrise, Florida? Does anybody have any idea? Jennifer, go ahead, please.
It's an older population. It's
It's
like 55 and up.
You bet. It's an older population. And there's another bunch of population in there too. Nick, you had your hand up. Did you have another comment?
No, I was thinking the same thing, over 55.
Same thing. Yeah, over 55. Okay. So there are a lot of retirees there, and they are also a lot of students there. And they have some similar needs. So they have potentially smaller living areas, and they need to have furniture which fits into smaller living areas. And this is like and they also probably have a lower budget that they are working from. So this is a really perfect storm for IKEA. And for every time I have gone to Sunrise, Florida, and gone to the IKEA, there is a huge parking garage, and there is a massive line of people getting into the parking garage, so much that it's way around the block, and there are police who are directing traffic to get people into the parking garage. So, this is kind of an astonishing thing if you think about it. And not only that, IKEA has also subsequently built an enormous store near Miami since then. So they really got the idea right. They really had this focus was right on target. So it's kind of an amazing innovation. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about value rules. Does value migrate in the value chain? And I thought this is a really kind of an interesting article, because it talks about how value, i.e. profits, can either migrate up or down the chain, or they can remain constant. So if you look at what happened, and you look at the progression of value from PCs, the value migrated from the manufacturers to the operating system, and then to the microprocessor. However, if you look at other industries such as automotive, the motor vehicle manufacturers have retained most of the value, as has the aerospace industry. So Boeing, Airbus, they all retain the value. So what rules do companies use to influence value migration? Now, I think the first two are the most interesting, because if you look at number 3 and number 4, follow the customer, who is the customer now? Needs change and values may shift. Yes, okay, this is always the case. Always the customer, you really need to track the customer. And if you look at 4, manage the growth story, balancing growth in smaller markets, sure, versus stability and control in larger markets. Growth is always more, is larger in smaller markets, just due to the size. And the control and the control in larger markets, okay. So if you think about it, think about some of the big companies. Maybe they have a 3 or 4 or 5% growth growth projection every year. Okay, well, if you are looking at hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, that's not a pretty bad figure. But the smaller markets can grow at 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is. And if they're growing at if they're starting at a smaller rate to begin with, okay, that's fine. Now, the other two, I think, are pretty interesting. The least replaceable player. So for example, systems integrators, Apple breaks up component processing steps across multiple vendors. They have an enormous number of vendors that they work with on their products, on their phones, on their smartphones, on other of the products that they produce. And they are they really pull everything together. And also becoming the guardian of quality. These values accrue to players which customers associate with product quality. So consider Apple. Any of you who have parents or other older relatives that have Apple products, I'm sure you are just delighted about the type of service that Apple provides, because you no longer have to be their tech support. They can go down to the Apple Store. They can take advantage of the service. I know myself. I had a problem with my iPhone a couple of years ago, and we took the iPhone down to the store, and they worked on it for 2 or 3 hours to try to fix the problem. So this is taking ownership of the issue, and this is a really big thing for consumers. So I think the idea about the product quality is really pretty good here. So here is an example of the guardian of quality. I got this off the Apple website a few years ago, but they really do take ownership of the issue, and they really do take ownership of the problem, and they don't pass it off to another piece of the equation in their chain. So this is a big thing. This is a very big thing. Okay, let's take a minute to talk about trade-off protection. The idea about trade-off protection is that your rivals choose not to copy you because it is way too expensive and way too, they can't, actually, they can't. And so think about Southwest. Southwest is now the largest air carrier in the US. And they have been working on this for 40 plus years. And they made some initial decisions, really important initial decisions, on the technology and design, operations, and marketing that allowed them to stand out and allowed them to really put themselves in a position that their rivals really couldn't copy. So they had a single aircraft before the AirTran acquisition, and they really this was a big advantage for them, because they only had to certify pilots on one aircraft. They only had to worry about maintaining one type of aircraft, and et cetera, et cetera. From the operations perspective, they had shorter segment flights. There were no baggage transfers to other airlines, no meals, no seat assignments. If you look at the major airlines, they had, going back to the technology and design, they had multiple types of aircrafts because they had to service smaller markets and also longer haul markets. They had seat assignments, multiple classes of service. Now, there are certain people who cannot tolerate the Southwest model. They want to have a seat assignment. They want to be, they want meals, such as they are. They want to make sure that they get the baggage transfers to other airlines, but also they want to call a travel agent, and the web is what Southwest uses most of the time. So the marketing is another situation here. So Southwest actually, made these choices right up front, and they built them into their system. And the thing that is really astonishing to me is that, and I don't know how many of you use Southwest, but I have learned over time that using Southwest changes your behavior. So when you use Southwest, it is much easier than you come to expect ease of service. So you line up, you get on the plane, you take whatever seat you want, what have you. And when you get accustomed to this, and then you have to go back to putting up with some of the other older carriers, the other incumbents, it's not, unless you are in first class or business class, it's not really as nice. So it's understanding that this behavioral change has taken place is pretty astonishing. Josie, go ahead, please.
Sorry, my question is Southwest still like this, or they were once like this? I've never flown them.
They're still like this. Yeah.
Wow.
They're still like this. They started out by being low cost. They are no longer low cost because you can easily get a lower cost ticket on some of the older incumbents, but you can still get some low cost fares with Southwest if you book on their special offers. You can't always get lower cost tickets on Southwest, but it's a lot simpler. It's an easier life, I guess you could say, than doing some of the other airlines.
Great, thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing that I always thought was really interesting, and I have never really investigated, is that I always thought that that Southwest and the penetration of Southwest into the smaller markets must have accomplished a lot of economic growth in the areas, in the smaller markets. And I've never really again researched this, but I have to believe it's the case. I live in southern New Hampshire. Southwest went into Manchester, which is about 20 minutes from my house. And I have to believe that, I mean, the growth in that airport was just staggering. And I have to believe that there was also a lot of other economic growth that resulted from Southwest going in there. And if you think about the other smaller airports that Southwest really fueled the growth of, it must have been staggering. Somebody has to have written something on this. I need to look it up. Okay, Allison, go ahead, please.
Just to continue on your point about Southwest, I know my parents, they now live down in Memphis, and for years, Delta had that hub locked up, and the rates, scheduling, it was such a challenge. And once Southwest was able to enter there, I I don't know how that works, how they get approval to do it, but I mean, to your point, it really unlocked, you know, commerce, flights, volume.
Yes.
I think that'd be pretty interesting to understand. I don't know if anybody in our group works in airlines, why they have to wait or how that works, but it was always years of, you know, not only that city, but other places of why isn't Southwest here or JetBlue? You know, it's fascinating yet frustrating.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And I I don't know. I don't know why they are potentially not in these other smaller locations, but they have just, you know, they have penetrated so many you know, different kind of I don't want to say not necessarily rural, but underserved markets. They have penetrated so many underserved markets, and it is it's just been great. I think it's been great for the country. I think it's been great for them, of course. You know, um, you know, consider the fact that they have that they are now the largest carrier in the U.S. It's just pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing, and the type of service that they offer is also pretty astonishing too, because they're they're nice people. They they don't they are not surly. They are helpful. They all, you know, work together. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. Okay. Jennifer, go ahead, please.
Really quickly, didn't Frontier Airlines try to copy their business model but failed miserably just with the point that you just made with their customer service, that overshadowed everything, and Frontier didn't have that, and so they've been still floundering compared to whereas Southwest has skyrocketed.
Yeah, there are a couple of airlines that tried to duplicate what they did. I think Continental was one of them. They tried to do uh, a comparable idea with Southwest, and it didn't work too well. There was, you know, you said Frontier. What was it? Not Spirit, but there was another one-off of the airlines.
Was it
That,
Allegiant?
pardon me?
Allegiant Airlines?
I don't know if it was Allegiant. I was thinking of another one. It was eh. I can't remember who it was now, but there was another one that tried and failed, you know. So I think that it's a really it's a different business model, and it is so much easier when you start out with this sort of newer business model than if you are in a larger airline and then try to duplicate or try to replicate, I guess you could say, something with Southwest. And it's just not everybody can do it. Not everybody can do it. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, good. All right. I'm not going to talk too much about outsourcing and offshoring. Everybody is pretty familiar with outsourcing and offshoring. And, you know, it started out years ago, really, when by offering sources such as, you know, payroll and things of that nature for the outsourcing. It's, you know, it was pretty common at that point. I mean, you can do pretty much of anything now in terms of outsourcing and offshoring. And you shouldn't do everything in terms of outsourcing. So sometimes it goes back and forth. So activities that can create value for a firm should not be outsourced. Sometimes firms will outsource different activities, and then they'll say, you know, we should really keep this internally, and they'll pull it back. And the whole idea is that activities that represent key sources of learning from the firm should also not be outsourced. So it is something that kind of comes and goes, but it is nearly everything can be outsourced at this point. It's just astonishing what can happen here. So the thing is too, also, that the business case is kind of tough for outsourcing, because you really can't have a very good view of what it's going to cost you to outsource this as a business. So sometimes there's you know, excessive project management that you really can't understand, and that you really can't anticipate when you are looking at the business model for this. If you are doing it in a farther country, sometimes you get cultural issues and relationship management issues. You know, there are costs that you can't really anticipate. So it is, you know, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to do it, especially if you are looking at outsourcing something that is going to be a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar contract. And that's tough. That's tough. Usually when you get into the multi-billion-dollar 10 to 15-year contracts on outsourcing, you are looking at months and months and months of negotiation, and it's risky. It really is. But if you involve the right people, it is less risky, because you can get a better view and really understand more clearly what this is going to mean to you as a company. Okay, so I think these items are pretty obvious, so I won't go into it too much. Let's take a quick look at strategic leadership, and it's you know, I gave you this quote from McKinsey because I think it's a pretty good one. The strategic leadership is a really critical part of strategic management. But I think the important thing here is it's not only the upper echelon that plays key roles in the strategic management, it's also the middle managers. And the whole idea here on the middle managers, and this is, you know, I gave you this reference. It's an older article from HBR, but it's a really good one. And it talks about how middle managers contribute to corporate success. And that because they play so many different roles, the middle managers are really, you know, at the forefront of what is going on in the company every day. They play a key role in managing the organization. They play a key role in communicating upwards and downwards within the organization, and their value here should not be undermined. They are really critical in this whole thing. So if you have the opportunity, please do take a look at this article. It's a very good one. Anyway, another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is this particular article about key shifts from the role of manager to leader. So the idea here is that managers are typically, on the front line, and they are specialists in the organization. They are more tactically focused. They more so solve specific problems. And when they have to move to a leadership role, these are some of the shifts that they have to go through. And this particular article talks about, gives some different views about how this shift occurs. So the whole idea here is that the transition is that there are people have to move to be more so of a strategist, more so of an agenda setter, more so of a leader, as opposed to a specific focused contributor. And the people, when they get into these positions, have to make an enormous amount of decisions every day. Probably, it could be hundreds of decisions every day. And it is just a different view and a different way of looking at the world. So if you are in the position of making this transition, I would highly recommend this article. I think it's a pretty good one. And it is, I think it's, I've seen and experienced this, and I think it's, there's some good advice in here. Okay, so we are at 4:20 on the East Coast of the US. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about our on-campus weekend that's coming up. And again, I'm really excited about meeting you and working with you directly. I have offered you a view of Maxwell Dworkin. This is a plaque that is in Maxwell Dworkin. And I thought it was really interesting because I had been in Maxwell Dworkin a number of times, but I never really paid attention to this. So I thought it was great because it has to do with William Gates, whom I'm sure are familiar to you all, and Steve Ballmer, also probably familiar to you all. And I thought it was just a fabulous plaque and a really interesting view, and the way that they talk about they want to foster the knowledge in computer science and electrical engineering for the benefit of all. So that was put up in 1999. Some of you may be familiar with Maxwell Dworkin already. And if so, you've probably seen this before, but it's a nice facility. It really is. And I think that you will enjoy the experience there. It's the room we have is very nice, and I think that you'll like it. It is about a 10-minute walk from Harvard Square. It is a 10-minute walk from Harvard Square. I clocked it a couple of weeks ago, and so you'll have every opportunity to go down there and have a nice lunch on Saturday. If you want to go out on Friday night, you can do that as well. I believe that Harvard sent you some information about places to eat and where to go. For those of you who have not been to Cambridge or the greater Boston area before, there is a great deal to do. There are many opportunities within the city of Boston. I know that there's a nice concert going on at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. There are a number of different jazz clubs if you like music. there is probably something going on in the Boston Garden. I haven't checked it out, but I expect that there is something there. Potentially, there might be something at Fenway Park if you're a sports fan. You know, there's a lot going on. So I think that you will. I hope that you will all enjoy it. I think you probably will. And the in terms of the uh, um, event on over the weekend, you can see the information on page 7 of the syllabus, and I will make every effort to start and end on time. And so we have 3 hours on Friday. We have 9 to 5 on Saturday, 9 to 1 on Sunday. And then for those of you who are driving in, you probably know this already. If you've been involved in the university, but you can get the parking through transportation.harvard.edu. There are a number of different garages available. There is a garage near Wasserstein, which is and a closed garage. Some of the parking is open, but there's quite a bit to choose from. So we will have some guest speakers, some group activities. We will have time for you to work with your team on the presentation. Do not wait until then to start talking to your team, please, because the sooner you get engaged with your team, absolutely the better. So please, please take advantage of the next couple of days to talk to people, to get an idea of what you might like to focus on, and you can get going. So I've blocked about an hour for you to work with your group. Again, don't wait for this period of time to start the discussion. Start the discussion now, and use this period of time to understand how you're going to apportion the work and really work with your group. So that's kind of the situation. I would be happy to take any questions you might have at this point. No questions?
Could you kindly state what the room number was again for Maxwell Dorkin?
Yeah, I believe it's 125, G125. So it's on the ground floor. You won't have trouble finding it. It's just go in the door, and you need to walk for, I don't know. It's not far. Just
it is
walk up.
G125. Yes.
125. Yeah. Okay. And just go up. It's on the right when you not far from when you go in. It's a nice room.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have trouble finding it at all. Yeah. Good room. So, anyone else? Any other questions? Allison.
My question isn't about the weekend, more so about what you just covered in regards to when you've done SWOT analyses before.
Sure.
When you do them, I mean, and I don't know if you've done them continuously with the same firms or whatnot, but what triggers them to do them? Is it in response to, is there normally like a set of reasons why they do it? Or, is it, financially or competitors, or what in your experience has allowed people to, like, what prompts them to do that?
Usually competitors.
Competitors. Okay.
Usually competitors, because they want to know how they are compared to these different the competition, and that's pretty typical.
Mhm.
And in the this is why it's pretty important to uh, get to a good level of granularity, because if you don't get to that reasonable level of granularity, you're going to be you're going to be unlikely to get value from it. So so it's important to say, okay, so I need to understand what my, what the situation is, what my strengths and weaknesses are, vis-a-vis my competitors in this particular product line, in this particular situation, what have you. It's because if you don't, you're just going to spend a lot of time and energy going through this, and you're not going to get a really clear picture of what is going on.
Mhm.
So that's pretty important, and I've done enough of these that I can tell you without questions that you need to focus in on the level of granularity where the differences are observed.
Got it.
Yeah.
I know with the several times that I've done it, one of the times where it was when, as an organization, we were just so, I don't know, comfortable sitting on our laurels. And then once
Yes.
a competitor came in, all of a sudden this was, the big to do in, conversation where everything was put on pause, and it was like, it was too late.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, holy cow, now what?
Yeah.
What happened here? So it's it's pretty important, and again, it's point in time. So it can really it can inform your next decisions, but it can't really necessarily, give you guidance on what you should do next.
Mhm.
But it's important to inform your decisions, because it can really give you some insight on what is going on.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, anybody else? All right, well, I will seriously look forward to meeting you. Now, the room is open at 4:30 because there's some other group that is using it prior to that. So G125 is available from 4:30 on. Luis and I will be there, and please do come, because we will start at 5. Please do come and make sure that you have that time frame allotted. Okay, very good. So any other questions? You can get back to me within the next couple of days. And otherwise, I will see you on Friday night, and you can take the last half an hour and do some reading, do whatever other preparations you want to do. I know that a number of you are traveling from outside, so I'm sure that you are, kind of getting ready to make your travel arrangements if you haven't done so at this point. So again, I'll look forward to meeting you all on Friday. So thanks very much, and thanks for your time today.